Hi, this is Pam McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. I did it. It's October 7th today, and we have been off all summer. So this is the first time in months I've been back in the studio. And we're starting off with a very special guest, Mary Beerworth, who is the Executive Director of the Vermont Right to Life Committee. I always get that committee thing. You have to explain that a little bit to people.
It's just old. We were formed in 1974. So
yes, when they were called, I looked this up, Voice of the Unborn.
That's right.
That was awesome. I'm very pleased that you're my first guest back. Ben will be joining me. Ben Kinsley, who's my co-host, will be joining me as of November. So I'm on my own this whole month, so watch out. So there we go. Mary, to introduce yourself to our viewers and tell them a little bit about yourself and, of course, about Vermont Right to Life.
Well, thank you. Yes, in 1971, the Voice of the Unborn were a group of folks who got together because of the sounds and noise about legalizing abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, and Vermont, in fact, did legalize abortion before Roe versus Wade. Then in 1974, the Voice of the Unborn became the charter member of the National Right to Life Committee, and they're a Washington, D.C. based organization, and I also serve on that board of directors.
Wow, that's great.
So Vermont Right to Life is two funds. One is an educational fund. That's a very primary focus for us, just to educate about the beauty of life in the womb, the fact that every one of those unique and unrepeatable human beings are a member of the human family from the moment of conception. So that's science, and what we are not is a religious organization. And so we are non-sectarian, non-partisan. We have endorsed in the past with our political action committee progressives, Democrats, Republicans. However, that's changing rapidly as the party itself seems to take out anyone who wants to show some respect for human life.
Right.
So we fought battle after battle, and it's always important for listeners to know that it was never only about abortion. It was about the fact that if you lose protection for one area of human life, it can slide into other areas. So it's always been abortion, infanticide, which is the killing of a newborn, mostly largely disabled newborns at risk of infanticide, and euthanasia at the end of life. So we've fought battles in the State House on all those issues.
Yeah, and I remember
you were there.
Well, especially about euthanasia, to respect the disabled, because the disabled community was very concerned about the way our laws were going
with physician-assisted suicide and the pressure to make everyone else's life easier, which is often the same pressure a pregnant, unexpectedly pregnant young woman feels, that she's inconvenienced other people by her pregnancy. Boyfriend doesn't want to pay child support, doesn't want his parents to know. Abortion becomes the easy choice for everyone else in the picture, but potentially not the woman who's got to make that terrible choice.
I had never made that correlation, but
it's very much the same.
Similar.
Yeah,
pretty similar. So we're going to talk today about something you may have heard about. It's called Proposition 5, and I'm going to let you explain this, because apparently if we pass Proposition 5, which will then become Article 22 in our Constitution, we'll be the very first state ever, once again, a bleeding edge move by Vermont, to have abortion rights in their Constitution.
In our Vermont Constitution. So I thought we have a slide and we could take a look at what the language of Proposal 5 is. This is the proposed amendment, and this is how it reads. It would read, if it goes on the ballot, that an individual's right to personal reproductive autonomy is central to the liberty and dignity to determine one's own life course, and shall not be denied or infringed unless justified by a compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means. So unfortunately, a lot of Vermonters will not have any idea
what that says,
what that means at all. It's a poorly strung together sentence as far as I'm concerned. It was raced through the Senate, supported by something like 60 organizations, largely all of them taxpayer funded, working supposedly to secure abortion rights. But repeatedly, testimony came in, if you really want it to mean abortion, somewhere it should say the word abortion.
Say the word abortion, right.
And there is a long purpose section that will not be on the ballot. And Vermont Right to Life, the ACLU, the Attorney General's office, and their legislative council all advised that at least put it in the purpose section, but put it somewhere. And the committee declined because they want it to mean more than abortion. And that's where it gets really frightening.
Yeah, and I was reading about that. Once again, I didn't think beyond what I was reading, because I even think the word personal reproductive liberty, or what do they use? Autonomy. That alone is certainly not about reproduction. It's about ending reproduction.
It's largely about ending, and it's very important to understand. So first of all, some of you will remember the battle in the State House over a bill, H57,
right.
now Act 47, which already in statute states that we are allowing unlimited, unregulated
right.
abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy. We already have that. That's in statute.
Right.
So now they want to go further and be the first in the nation to enshrine that notion into the Constitution. People need to clearly understand that it means without question you have stripped any opportunity to protect an unborn human child throughout all 9 months of pregnancy. So even if it has horrible unintended consequences that are so offensive to the large number
right.
of Vermonters that would want some protection for that baby after viability, not to be experimented on,
right.
not to be harmed. The legislature would have tied their own hands to respond responsibly to an right. unforeseen circumstance. Right. So 0 rights for the unborn, and then we have to look at where does personal reproductive autonomy take us? And the answer has come back from the scholars we are highlighting, that it take you as far as your imagination can
right.
allow you to go.
Right, and some of them I was reading about, they've already done some experimenting. We wouldn't necessarily want to make legal. It's pretty scary stuff.
Unconstrained science
yeah.
is a very scary yeah. thing, and if you could convince a vulnerable woman for money to yeah. engage in some of these, something that the legislature is not anticipating,
yeah.
She may be capable of saying yes, but lack the capacity, needing drugs, whatever
right.
pressure she's
right.
under, to be able to understand the harm she's doing to herself, to her unborn child.
Right.
This could take us many, many difficult places, but I want to concentrate on what came out of our recent conference. We had a life symposium, and right. we invited in some of the top constitutional experts in the country.
Yeah.
And they're focused in on conscience protection for doctors and nurses.
Oh, yes, right.
Because
right.
under this, if your right to personal reproductive autonomy is a constitutional right, can a doctor or nurse refuse to be trained to do abortions yep. and refuse to participate?
Yep.
So, Pat, I'd just like to say to your viewers, so choice now means no choice for a medical professional, right. and it goes beyond abortion.
Yeah.
Personal reproductive autonomy is about transgender surgeries. It is about things we yeah. can't even imagine.
Well,
3-parent embryos, doing experiments, the chimeras, where they're mixing human species with animal
right,
species.
Yeah, cloning.
Right? Cloning,
yeah.
and it'd be your right to personal reproductive yeah. autonomy. Right. It's a kind of brave new world of where this
and
could
just
take
so people,
us.
Once it's in the Constitution, right. it's very difficult to change it. It has to get passed out of the legislature again this year, and then it will be on our ballot in November of 2022.
Yes, and we do have a slide that shows where we're at now.
Oh, the timeline.
The timeline,
right.
yes, and maybe that
yeah.
could be put up, and you can see that it's a 4-year process. It does not involve the governor, although he said that he would have voted for it. The timeline, we are right about step 2. We've passed step 2, and the final step is to one more vote in the Vermont House, but first there has to be a public hearing.
Right.
And then the full body will take it up again, and once we believe that the numbers are there for them to pass it, but we will fight, and we will bring up all these arguments. Your legislators are going to hear all of these arguments articulated. They've been hearing it and ignoring it, but we are going to do it again. And then it becomes a public question, and you'll be looking for that on your ballot.
But when, as you said, when you read that question, you don't really understand what its implications are, because I have talked to so many people that don't realize we're talking about an abortion at 9 months, there but for one breath. It's a living, breathing.
Well, and we're saving babies at 21, 22 weeks routinely.
I put on my Facebook, I put a video of, I think the baby, I can't remember how many weeks, it fit in the palm of the doctor's hand, alive and well and thriving, and everything's a go. And
they're getting better and better at this, and the more babies they save at that young age, they're going to move viability back further and earlier and earlier in pregnancy as medical technology advances. But Vermont will be like cavemen on the subject of unborn human life. An interesting fact we've been throwing out, we have something called the guessing game. You'll be able to find it on our website. But the guessing, how many plants and animals have legal protection in Vermont under Vermont law? 215.
Wow.
And our unborn fellow human beings will have zero.
Zero, right.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned your symposium, which you had, which I thought, I went, and it was excellent. I only stayed through lunch, and I apologize for that, but I had other things at home I had to deal with. That'll be another whole show about my poor puppy.
Coco, I know who Coco is.
Oh, I know. Well, now she has diabetes, and now we have cataracts, and oh my God. But anyway, it was a wonderful seminar, and I wanted to talk to you certainly about your keynote speaker and what she had to say, which I hope that's on your website.
Yes.
She was pretty dynamic.
Well, Helen Alvarez, famous for unassailable credentials as a constitutional scholar.
Right.
She advises the top legal minds in the nation.
Right.
And so we did bring her in, and we were grateful to have her. What she had to say, and we're going to show up in her next law review article, because Vermont's attempt to do this. Yeah. She walked us back. I hope you heard some of that, all the way through the history of the Vermont Constitution.
Yeah, I was there for the whole thing. She was so passionate. I think that's what drew me in. Yeah. Because every once in a while she was a little above my head. But she brought me right back with the passion and made me really listen.
She's great. And if they want to challenge her credentials, they're going to lose on that.
Yeah,
and it's important that people understand that Planned Parenthood is the largest provider of abortions in the United States of America, the state of Vermont, and in the world. And it was their influence in the State House that, and their ability to decide elections at election time. A lot of the folks on the pro-choice side want their endorsement at election time, and they dominated the State House.
Right.
The Speaker of the House is a former Planned Parenthood employee. And their lobbyist is the former majority leader in the House. So they have a powerful hold and a grip. But the legislature's out of touch with ordinary Vermonters. So regular Vermonters going to work every day, and we know because we've done the public opinion polling, and they'll self-identify as pro-choice. Yeah, they absolutely do.
Well, I think most people do support, as you know, my position.
Yes.
Support abortion up to a couple of months maybe, but 9, forget it. And that's why I think most people don't have a clue what they're talking about.
So we do the polling. They identify as pro-choice, and then we ask them some questions. Do you think a parent of a minor ought to know that her daughter's pregnant, and that the first question a parent would ask is, who's the father? Because maybe she's being abused, for one thing. And why should the father skulk away while she's down getting a secret abortion? So these are things that parents need to know to help raise a healthy child.
Right.
We did have some testimony during that parental notification debate that probably the unhealthiest thing is a secret abortion. Try to hold all that when you're 15 years old.
And to live with that as a 15-year-old your whole life.
We see women having problems that, I mean, it has a negative impact on mental health in many cases, not all cases, but in some cases. And we need to make sure we're informing, we need to make sure we're involving family, and that people know you're not going through trauma
This is what I was thinking about this the other day. So you don't tell me as a parent that my daughter's going to have an abortion. And say my house, my husband, my husband's brother, somebody is abusing my daughter. And so after the abortion, We send her back to the home?
We send her back, and
to the situation?
And the evidence is destroyed.
Yeah.
And that evidence, the DNA proof, would even save her a court appearance.
Yeah.
Because it's proof.
Yeah.
So all of that is a big cover-up. So that's just one subject. Definitely we have high numbers when it comes to protecting a baby after viability, an unborn child after viability. That's around 24 weeks,
right.
I would say. So at least a recognition. Certainly fetal homicide laws, somebody doesn't, some abusive father doesn't want that baby,
Right.
kicks her in the stomach, and that has happened here
Right.
in Vermont. No penalty for the death of the baby.
Yep.
And there's several other questions along those lines. Should there be health and safety standards for abortion clinics and Planned Parenthood? No, they want that. And all of those things were rejected by the legislators sitting in the current legislature. So they're out of touch with what people really want. Now, the job is going to be huge. Thank you for letting me come on today, because we're going to we have to get information out, and this is a terrific avenue for us.
Well, I think you said that, let me get this right, for years we actually didn't have a law. It just didn't prevent. There was nothing against about saying you can't have an abortion. So when they put this bill forward, 2 years ago?
Yes, 2019.
I think people finally realized what was actually, quote, in practice.
Right.
And I was one of them. I just went insane. I thought, whoa. And I think they did it because when Kavanaugh was elected to the Supreme Court, they all figured, well, this is it. And now I think they're going to be more charged up because of Texas, because of their new...
That Texas law has been held up in court, but pro-lifers in Vermont are just thrilled that we're talking about a beating heart.
Yep.
And it's a detectable beating heart at 6 weeks. That little heart has been beating since regularly beating at 24 days.
Yeah. So I think that got the pro-life people, the pro-abortion people pretty worried.
Oh, yes, and I had media interviews, and they wanted to talk about Texas, and I said, Texas will do what Texas will do, but Vermont is what I'm concerned about, and Vermont is going to an extreme no other state has
I just think people need to understand that it's 9 months. I think that, because if you remember, I had Lucy LaRiche on when she was in the legislature, and she said to me that we don't have, which I don't believe this, we don't have 9-month abortions here in Vermont, but we don't keep statistics either. So how we can say that without, very, very rarely do we have good statistics on abortions.
We do have some, and what they do in collecting the statistics, first of all, they make them very difficult to find, but they lump together 13 weeks through to the end. And so you can't guess where it's at. I always say second and third trimester abortions, because the push is onto that 20 to 24 week pregnant woman. However, when you open the door by making this a constitutional right, a bad actor could move to Vermont. And why wouldn't they move to Vermont and open some shoddy shop that is specializing in late-term abortion? Right now, if they get really late, we're often sending them over to New York or down to Massachusetts. But there's no... It goes as far as your imagination can take you. And so the answer from the committee when we mentioned that was, they know Planned Parenthood, they're a national organization, it's like a McDonald chain, and they probably have their own internal standards, so we're not accusing them of not running we're accusing them of doing almost all the abortions in the state, about 1,100 of the 1,200 abortions they do at Planned Parenthood. But someone could move here tomorrow, and they would have tied their hands. It's personal reproduction. If this woman desperately wants a 32-week abortion and wants to go to that shoddy butcher, then she can.
She can. And because it's in the Constitution, it takes, as Mary just explained, it takes a couple of years,
4 years,
and 2 legislative cycles to get any change made. Now, if you've got Proposition 5 of the language, if they make a change to that language, does it have to go through the process again?
It would. Even a comma would mean that this wording has to start all over again.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They cannot make any changes.
I was wondering about that because what a great ideal opportunity if we have the legislative session to do something, to put a little bit more clarity, because the words are not defined.
The words are not defined, and well, we will try. It's important. I mean, maybe you're listening today and you're pro-choice and you want this.
Yeah.
Just remember that you will open the door to a series of other constitutional amendments. So it's very fundamentally wrong to do this to our Constitution.
Yeah.
It's to willy-nilly change it for a political agenda.
Well, I think that's important because that's not what a Constitution is meant to be.
That's right.
And I think either you had written something or Toborg, what's her first name?
Sharon Toborg, our
had
policy
said about
has.
this just doesn't belong in the Constitution.
It doesn't belong in the Constitution.
It's not what constitutions are for.
And it's an abdication of legislative responsibility. I can't repeat that enough. Why would they take an issue that involves human life, health and safety of women, and a host of other things? And if they're going to begin, and they have several other amendments lined up, so you might want to take a look at that, not on abortion, but on other subjects. So if we're going to start rewriting the fundamental founding document, which has served us well in Vermont,
we are a special place.
prepared.
We need to maintain that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, just on a side, Ben and I did this thing over the summer called Banter and Beans, and what it did was over coffee. This is my Banter and Beans cup, I have it. But we talked about the legislation that was passed that nobody knows about. There were over 100 bills passed last year, and I bet people couldn't mention 5 of them, and some of them are dandies. And I was shocked at some of them.
And another one that's shocking, if you want to look it up, that passed a few years ago under the radar is Act 35, which basically strips parental rights over their minor children. So they were at the conference and they had a table and they were calling for a repeal of Act 35, just a paragraph long. Now that also will be sealed into our Constitution, is that parents can't have rights in this arena.
Well, that issue about parental notification was, I was surprised at a bunch of people that chose not to support that when, in fact, they had started their political career very much in support of parental notification.
I remember.
Yes. Don't want to pick on the governor too much, but that was a keynote part of his campaign when he ran for lieutenant governor.
Yes, and the pressure inside the State House. So I always say there's inside the State House and there's outside the State House. And inside it's dominated by some extremely powerful, influential entities that whack at election time. And so they lose sight of how the average Vermonter is again, like you said, the average Vermonter is too busy to really.
You get very caught up in the power of the State House. That's very true, and you forget what you're there for, and that happens a lot. I wanted to talk about the workshops. You had your keynote speaker, and then in the morning you had 3 workshops, and then repeated them in the afternoon, after a lovely lunch, by the way. And that was a wonderful video that you showed at lunch about the young woman who actually was a survivor of abortion. And there's an actual group.
There are so many abortion survivors that they have a network. And
just amazing.
Abortion Survivors Network. I've met many, actually, abortion survivors, and a nurse who held a baby who was being abandoned in the linen closet. That's often what happens. They just set the baby aside. It wasn't supposed to be alive, still breathing. There's just shocking stories, but Melissa Oden and her network, we've had her speak here several times. It's very, very moving. Oh,
it was. I was very glad. My back was sorted to the video, so I would look around every once in a while, and I was sort of glad because her voice was so powerful.
It was powerful.
And I was watching the faces of people watching her, and I thought, that was some
It's
video.
pretty powerful to talk about somebody who was meant not to be here.
And to know that you were meant to be aborted. What does that do to you?
Well, there's a lot of trauma around. So Roe v. Wade was out of Texas, and Jane Roe, was actually Norma McCorvey. So they used her story. She really didn't want to be pregnant. They made up a whole story of rape and all this, and it wasn't true. It was her boyfriend. And she carried her baby to term. And that child was put up for adoption, and she was horrified to learn. She was pro-life little girl, and she had no idea that she was the baby that of the Roe v.
Wow.
Wade case. So that story has been coming out lately.
Oh, interesting.
Norma McCorvey became pro-life, but her daughter, I don't think, could ever forgive her for being part of this case.
I mean, I think what it must do to you mentally.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine.
It's a little bit of a form of trauma
I would
to
think so.
learn you weren't wanted.
Yeah. To that extent.
To that
It's
extent.
not like somebody wanted to give you up for abortion to a loving family, so you'd have this was abortion. This was ending your life.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you had the workshops you had. One was the impact of abortion on women, and then you had how can you impact your community, which you led, and then how to protect your conscience and your profession. Could you talk about the impact of abortion and why you chose to protect your conscience and your profession? That is,
it's important that people understand that only 2 states do not have, by statute, conscience protection for medical workers. It's only 2 states. You want to guess which 2? Vermont and New Hampshire.
Interesting.
So under the federal government, under the prior presidential administration, there was an absolute effort to protect conscience of healthcare workers. You can't be a life-giving nurse and be asked to do something that is morally and ethically appalling to you. And it's not just abortion. There are all kinds of procedures. Do you want to do transgender surgery on a minor? No, I don't want to.
Right.
I don't believe in it or whatever.
Right.
And we have people from other countries providing medical care in Vermont, and they have moral and religious objections. So now, however, with the federal government under the new administration, doesn't care about conscience protection. And I'm just going to flat out say that. They've dropped cases and they're not pursuing cases of conscience protection. So not only do we not have it in statute, now we're going to have a constitutional amendment that could actually mandate participation in objectionable procedures.
Well, do you remember our friend Gail Graham, a nurse, she was a retired nurse, she had an issue, a direct experience with this sort of thing right in Los Angeles in California. And we had a nurse at UVM who was,
that's right.
I don't know if she was fired or threatened to be fired.
After she was forced to participate, she left the job.
Yeah.
She fled the state. She was worried about, and she was the whistleblower. She just left. And that case has been dropped by the new administration. So they were pursuing that case. There's so many possibilities of problems here. I don't know if your hospital could be at risk for losing federal funds for mandating participation. So the legislature did not do their job. They spent the summer advised by our Attorney General. He used 19 members of his staff to help craft this language. And the loopholes and the flaws are huge. They're dangerous and unpredictable. I could use word after word after word.
Well, I think because they don't define anything. That's right. And besides the fact they don't mention the word abortion, which is what it's all about, nor 9 months. I mean, it's unfettered.
It's vague.
Whatever you want,
it
goes.
Is. Yep. And everyone was in agreement from the experts.
So this was interesting. I read it said personal reproductive autonomy is not the same as the right to abortion, which was much. They were talking about how much broader our language is than Roe versus Wade.
It's broader than Roe. It goes beyond Roe.
How do you look yourself in the mirror and justify that?
I don't know. It's really difficult. I did want to talk about one of the workshops you're mentioning at the impact of abortion on mental health.
Yes, right.
So Dr. Maureen Curley is an old friend of mine.
Oh.
She lived in Jay Peak, Vermont, and I did too.
Right.
And so we were friends, and she was doing clinical trials at UVM, the UVM Medical Center. She had students who had had abortions who were coming to her for mental health treatment. She's a psychiatric nurse professional. Yes, she's a PhD. And then she went on to McGill to do studies there. She went to Florida to do studies there, and now she's in Ohio. And it is always her practice to help women who are suffering mental issues from their abortion. And that's never discussed here in Vermont, never. But
do they, when you go in for an abortion, there is no discussion in Planned Parenthood. Is there any discussion about, is this really what you want? Do you understand the procedure? Do you understand what's happening? That there's no going back.
There's no going back. It's
you
forever.
make your decision.
So I have never been to Planned Parenthood. I have women who tell me they didn't get much, but that could have all changed.
Yeah.
They certainly don't offer prenatal care services that would be, it's a very focused on abortion.
Yeah.
Well, they do 1,100 abortions a year out of the 1,200. It's a lot. And they have 12 clinics in our state. That's more per capita than California has.
Yeah.
And our neighbors in New Hampshire with twice the population have only 5. And our neighbors in Maine have only 4, with much higher population. So we have they're a politically active group. I don't think they can deny that. They have it's Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, and Planned Parenthood International. They have fired 2 national presidents for trying to put the emphasis on health care when the board insists that abortion,
it's about abortion.
is their political
We
goal.
seem to be the petri dish for a lot of a lot of things.
I know, and I fear the experiments on unconstrained science, and I fear that. Yeah.
Yep.
Sale of baby body parts. I mean, where could this?
Well, that was another. We had somebody, I forget her name, and I apologize to her, about talking about making sex legal.
Yes, prostitution.
Prostitution, thank you. Prostitution legal, and that's going to come up because Vermont is come to Vermont and get these things passed, and then
and again, it's like just same argument that we have for a pregnant woman who feels under pressure from her circumstances, and an elderly person who feels under pressure from her circumstances to die early, a sex worker can very well start out thinking it's all great and then wind up no choice, no choice, no choice. So
I also read somewhere that this opens the door for the dad to say, no help from here.
Yeah, there's been court cases that have gone pretty far. And it's, and we would never be for that. I mean, the father has responsibility and child support is essential. But there are cases where a man felt tricked. She said, I can't get pregnant.
Right.
I don't want to get pregnant. I'm on the pill and I'm infertile. And then there's a baby and she wants it and he doesn't want to pay child support.
Right.
So we brought that up. That actually was in our testimony, and they just poo-pooed that. But where's his personal reproductive autonomy? And I hate to even think that might happen.
Right.
But Planned Parenthood has gone pretty far. So they may even see that, but because now they're saying personal reproductive autonomy means defunding the police, fair housing, livable wage.
Right.
So I think what they're seeing is if you want to have your baby, the government has to provide free daycare, college.
Right.
So sort of a big giant leap into, and so then it wouldn't matter if he didn't want to pay. See what I mean? I don't know what they're seeing.
No,
I'm just seeing.
Well, they must see something I don't see.
Because they are saying personal reproductive liberty means all those things.
I don't understand what's happening. I really don't. And because I'm there getting on in years, and my upbringing was a little different than.
You thought you had to work for a living.
Yes, I do, exactly. Well, that's another story altogether. But I just find that, why? That's what do you gain from this other than you can do it and it's control and power? But to what benefit?
Well, who
this?
gains is Planned Parenthood, because they've shielded their business from any scrutiny, any oversight of government oversight.
Yeah.
And so, to me, I've always said, it's like if Ben and Jerry's came down to the State House and said, we want to make sure everybody else who makes ice cream has a clean place and it's regulated and taxed, but we don't.
We don't have to.
We don't have to.
Yeah, right.
So because they're a powerhouse. They have been able to. I have another slide. I'm just going to quickly
please.
Zach put up. It's about some little bullet points about what it means. It begins with unprecedented amendment to the Vermont Constitution. This has not been tried anywhere anywhere else in the United States of America. It would add a new article to Chapter 1. And Vermont has not added a new article since are you ready for it? 1786.
Right.
No other state has anything like it, so we are a petri ground for. And it goes further. We are looking at potentially being asked for Vermont taxpayers to pay for everything that involves personal reproductive autonomy.
Yeah.
So we can say abortion, but also I want to be sterilized, but then I want it reversed, and then I want it reversed again. We just keep paying. Transgender surgery we've mentioned, but then reversal of transgender surgery. So what's the financial impact?
Right.
No question asked
Right.
out of the legislature. What is this going to mean for us
Well,
financially?
you were on my show probably about a year or so ago, and I remember listing all of the products that are available before intercourse and after intercourse to make sure you don't get pregnant. And I keep using this with every right, because they keep saying women's right. With every right comes responsibility. If you want to have sex, don't get pregnant. There is really no reason why you should get pregnant. With the before, the after. I mean, I think
And we provide it all for
yeah.
free.
Yeah.
And boy, once upon a time, Pat, I'm sure you remember, the mantra was it wasn't all a woman's responsibility, but now it seems like it is.
Oh, yeah, it's all,
we don't
all
talk about men's responsibility.
right.
We don't talk about delaying sexual activity for young kids. That's just a joke.
Right.
And the big influence in sex and health education in the schools is Planned Parenthood.
Right.
And now they're in this as young as the 6th grade, offering condoms in all the middle schools.
Yeah.
So they always seem to promote the riskiest behaviors among the youngest of our teens, who
Right.
are the least capable of
But
responsibility.
They do have access. The young folks have access to all kinds of protective products that they can use. And
But the judgment portion of their brain is
that's
not
true.
ready until they're 21.
Yeah, not developed.
And so if we could delay, if we had a message of delay,
Yeah.
because first of all, I know more kids that forgot to take their pill
Oh.
and forgot that antibiotics negated the effects of the birth control pill. So they get a flu or a cold, whatever, they
Yeah.
take antibiotics, they'll be pregnant. And so mommy and daddy need to know
Right.
as reminders, and everyone's message should be stick to your studies, get a job,
Yeah,
develop your art and
Yes,
talent.
Abstinence, I think, is the word we
Yeah,
used when we were kids.
Well, that's a joke
Abstinence.
now. So
Yeah.
that's a joke.
Well, because we can make any errors fixable.
Through an abortion, but
Yeah.
the idea
That's
that
just-
doesn't have long-term consequences is very sad.
So, Mary, you had a great turnout at this,
did,
and
we did.
I didn't see a lot of coverage, although there were quite a
did
few
get
cameras,
some.
or did we?
Yeah, we got some. We had a lot of cameras there because for the continuing education
Right.
credits, we taped everything. But also, we did have WCAX, and they did a very
Did they?
fair
Oh, good. I didn't
job.
see that. I'll have to
No,
go
it's
check it out.
excellent, and they covered the rally at the State House by Planned Parenthood,
Right.
And it was exactly the same amount of time.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
We were very pleased.
Good.
Yep.
Well, I think if people, I keep saying this, there were so many catchphrases, I guess, that just stuck in my head during the morning when I was there, that I think people, if they could see it and understand what we're talking about here, I think
job.
most Vermonters would not be happy with this. I don't care what they say. I understand that they want abortion to a certain point because things happen. And I understand that, and yet I understand the folks who are religious and their point. Do you know, I don't know if you've ever done this, you probably have a million times, have it memorized. I looked up what the dictionary said. Let me find this. This is incredible. This is the dictionary. Here it is, Oxford Dictionary. Definition of fetus. An unborn offspring of a mammal, in particular an unborn human baby more than 8 weeks after conception.
Yep.
Sounds like a
human
child to me. Sounds like
Actually,
Oxford's
fetus
got it
is
right.
Latin for young one human. It's
Yeah,
a young
exactly.
one human. And so, yeah, I mean, it's. I thought Helen Alvarez was excellent in talking about including our family members and including the unborn as a member of the human family.
Yep.
Instead of creating this tension between a mother and her own child, why can't we foster respect for human life?
Right.
One of the comments from Planned Parenthood or a Planned Parenthood supporter in the 7 days coverage was that pro-lifers only want to ban all abortions and shame women. And that's so
Shame
far from
women.
the truth. Shame women. And so if we can set that record straight, we want to encourage every woman to not only carry her baby to term, but to have all the resources she needs to do that.
Right.
And so there are 11 crisis pregnancy centers, pregnancy resource centers in Vermont, all run by donations alone, no taxpayer funding. and they will stick with women all the way through, young girls and even 2 to 3 year old, until the mother feels she can do it on her own.
Oh, that's great.
Oh no, they're fabulous. I speak often at their fundraisers and encourage, because Vermont Right to Life can't be out there, and we would have no authority to speak if we didn't offer these resources. And so I'll be up in Lyndonville with the new Futures Pregnancy Center. That's the most recent one opening up. And it's wraparound care. You can get a free ultrasound. You get all kinds of advice. They'll stick with you through parenting classes and when you are ready. And a lot of times the mothers remain excellent friends with these people.
Well, of course.
They're some of the nicest people in the world. So we do not want to shame women. And banning all abortions, we would rather get the number of abortions to 0, because women have the information they need and the support.
So how are you going to, we spend a little bit of time in your breakout group talking about how can people that support what you're trying to do get that information out? What can be done? I mean, what are your plans to get the word out for this legislative session?
It's a big job.
So
we're going to be pulling in people who have different views, like you do, Pat. We appreciate it so much that you were there. You're not someone who takes, you represent most Vermonters, I think, and you were willing to come and listen. And we're going to move players into place like you, who can take this message and not make it all about abortion, but make it about this whole broader subject, and go to select boards, go to Lions clubs, Rotary clubs, and just begin to spread the word. We are not going to have the financial resources that the other side has. I mean, it's just incredible money going into Planned Parenthood. Will be the largest entity in favor, and millions in state and federal funds come to them, and they will use that accordingly. And I told this story in the workshop when the Equal Rights Amendment was being fought in the 1980s, which again had deceptive language, highly favored by Vermonters. The NEA used taxpayer funds to send a pro-ERA flyer home with every student
you said that. Yes,
in their classrooms to give to their parents, saying, vote yes on the ERA. And for a word of encouragement for those who are opposed listening to this show, it did get defeated. And sometimes when you use money that way, but we expect this to happen again, but when you can feel that improper use of resources coming at you, you get suspicious, I hope.
Well, the plan is to get it defeated. If it doesn't pass this year, that's it.
That's it.
They have to start over again.
Right.
And I mean, just the definitions of what are they talking about? It's like,
and we're asking people to call.
This is from Donovan's office?
DJ Donovan worked with Planned Parenthood, and some of the elected, they weren't elected, they were up for election.
Yeah.
So I don't want to mention too many names, but we have all the paperwork in the office. There was 19 members of his staff, and they researched and they worked to come up with this language, made a little adjustment to it in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, but this is his work, and it's completely, it's dangerous, irresponsible. I just don't, the word. So getting, and anybody's listening, we need help getting the word out. It's going to be a grassroots effort. But I will tell you this, they think they're going to steamroll us. Win, lose, or draw, Vermont Right to Life sees this as an opportunity to talk about pro-life, the good news about pro-life, and also to make sure Vermonters are more informed about what the real situation is. So we're gonna see it as an opportunity that we're gonna take. Yeah, I think they made a mistake.
I think you should. I mean, seriously, I know that I think a lot of people like myself and others would need some talking points. And make sure that we're all on the same same page, talking wise, and saying the same things.
Some basic facts. And we will be doing that. And I have a map, huge map of the state of Vermont, and we're tagging all the areas where we have supporters, and we're going to get them involved.
Because I don't understand, and I think nationally it's an issue too, about the data's not there. I mean, we know how many, but we don't know what month. We don't, as you just said, the second and third trimester sort of lumped together. You don't have the data to even refute it. You would think they would want data to know how, quote, successful or what the need is out there that they're meeting, because
I know, it just blows my mind. Science and facts don't seem to matter. We're talking about science when we talk about...
This is all emotion.
It's all emotion, it's all political.
Yeah, and it's hard to fight emotion, Because if you tell people you want to not have abortion, I think most Vermonters would push back. So there is, I think a lot of Vermonters understand that maybe I'm not saying there's a need for abortion, because there's not, but there are reasons for abortion. That's probably
right.
The better
and
way
we're not
to
going to be. That's not our argument, because that's already legal through all 9 months pregnancy in the state. So what we need to do, though, is find those stories, and we have a lot of stories. Yeah. I mean, they have a lot of stories, dramatic stories, and they'll be using emotion to promote this. But we'll have to be pushing back with the stories we have.
Yeah.
That's really difficult for women to do, to tell that story over and over and over again. And they relive it, and they always cry. But I will tell you, Pat, that of all the women I know who've had abortions, who are now working in the pro-life movement, they always wind up saying to me, Mary, I just felt I had no choice. So how sad is that? They use that choice word.
Oh, to have the abortion.
Yes. They felt that was always the end of the story. I just felt I had no choice.
Well, but I think what you're saying about the support that's available through the 9 months and beyond, I don't know what's available. God forbid at 78, we don't even want to go there. I think it'd be a miracle.
You'd have to have that, baby.
Exactly, just to show I can. But what's there? You're not alone, and there'll be support. And I think
there's so few.
But I don't think people know that.
People don't know about the. So one representative wrote an article recently, and she said was kind of critical. She's pro-life, but was a little critical of the pro-life movement for not understanding the crisis. And I said, do you know we have 11? And she goes, I thought we had 1 or 2.
Well, see? Something's, obviously that's a funding issue on your part to be able to get the funding to get the word out. Because in my day, we had places where we sent people from my high school. They went away. They went to visit Aunt so-and-so. And they were actually in a home for unwed mothers. And that was not a supportive environment. That was a shame.
Terrible. They were terrible. So we've come a long way, baby.
No, we have. But I don't think people know how far or...
Yes. And there still is a need for a place to go away, but not some kind of shameful place.
Right.
But to get out of the community and just... So that's a piece that we're still looking to fill. There was going to be a big home where you could voluntarily go, not sent away. But if it was just that you wanted to be out from questioning and all that.
But honestly,
because
Mary,
they think they're covering up something by getting the abortion, and guess what? The whole school will find out. It all comes out eventually. Sure. They try to say, well, I had a miscarriage or whatever. It doesn't work. The rumor mill goes flying. Sure. That little girl will tell one friend, and the next thing you know, it's everywhere. And so...
Aren't people more
accepting? Very much.
I get that sense that
if
somebody got pregnant in high school, it wouldn't be the shame it was when I was in school.
Yeah, but there's just so much pressure from the boyfriend, college acceptance, first kid to go to college in my family, pressure.
Right.
Now here's one answer that Massachusetts has. There is, and this I would love to see, but it would take money that nobody seems to. Taxpayer dollars.
Right.
Colleges should have, because this is where they're experimenting. This is where it's all over the campus. Go to Planned Parenthood, get your, and all this stuff, and mixed floors, boys and girls on the same floor. She gets pregnant. She wants to carry and still finish her education. Let's put some resources in there. Let's get her some daycare on campus.
Oh, I agree with that.
And let's say it's not a choice between your education and this baby.
Right.
This is your decision, and we're going to back you on.
I agree with that.
And Massachusetts offers that.
Do they really?
At least one college you can go, and they will. Your baby is welcome.
That's great.
I know, but see, there's a whole culture of life that we need to establish here in Vermont, where we don't say we're celebrating one choice. And just for your listeners, in case they think I'm making that up, the rally at Planned Parenthood was, who loves abortion? And we do.
Oh, stop.
That is true story. My coworker was in the room, and that is not how Vermonters feel about abortion.
No, I don't believe that at all. And I think you're right. If that's what they're thinking, they're out of
They
touch.
Shout Your Abortion campaign. There's a Shout Your Abortion campaign. Yay, yay.
Oh, you should wear
that empowers
on your t-shirt?
women.
Right, nice.
Yeah. So anyway, there's extremes.
Yeah.
and we have to carve a path, but building a culture of life in Vermont would benefit the entire state. We have a lack of population. We have aborted 100,000 unborn babies since 1971. We're not honoring life. We're not putting our taxpayer dollars in support of life. And they like to think it's about women's health. They'd be more balanced if it was really about women's health.
If any legislator this year put in a bill that demanded data, do you think it would go anywhere? Well, why not? That would bring attention to it. Yeah. Have somebody who
we can put it in. And
why not? And say, how come they haven't taken? Where is the data? Yeah. There isn't any. Yeah. Other than the number.
And really, you're right. And we should also put in a request for how Proposal 5 would impact taxpayers. I mean, what's the funding impact of this?
You had some legislators at your seminar.
We did.
They probably would be glad to do that.
Yes.
Put in data and put in tax impact on taxpayers.
Because usually you were there, right? You looked at the financial impact. Yeah. It usually went to Ways and Means or tax.
We went to GovOps, so I didn't see it that much, but I know how much they gave Planned Parenthood every year.
A lot.
Yeah. And now they've gotten more money from the feds. So we're waiting to see if the governor is going to retract the state funding.
850,000. Because that's just for Vermont.
That was to make up the gap because the feds backed away. But now that they're at the table, that should be money that goes back to our coffers.
Yes.
Correct?
It should.
Yes, because he did promise that.
You don't want to run again, do you? And come down and start.
Too old for that, Mayor. But thank you. I miss it. I miss it. But that's why we do this.
Yeah, but no, I'm very happy, and it's nice to have a conversation with someone who doesn't have to be 100%. But what's best for Vermont? Yeah. You know, it's vote for Vermont.
Well, I always said I had to, because I am 3 months, and that's and then I had 2 friends years ago before the law was passed, before Roe versus Wade. 2 of them went to the dark alley. Yeah. One, no problem whatsoever. Yeah. The other one could never have children again after that. It was just a hatchet job. And I was not unhappy when the abortion became legal. But there's abortion, and then there's 9 months. That's
well, and I'll tell you a more recent story, and that is a friend of mine who really wanted her baby, pressured by the boyfriend, and at 19 she went in, had the abortion at Planned Parenthood, and they said, "Oh, you'll be able to have a baby when you're ready," and that was the only baby she was ever going to have, because after that, no pregnancy.
Well, that's what this woman, actually, my friend almost died on the table.
But it's modern day. I mean, and women still die from their abortions. Yeah. In 1993, a woman in Vermont died from her abortion.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I wish you a lot. Is there any other slide that you or anything
you'd
like?
I would love to show you that. You saw the painting if you were at the.
Oh, please talk about that painting.
That painting is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so if we can get that slide up, that would be great. And it's a artist in Shelburne who's new to me. I did not know her.
Very young. I was very impressed.
She's a beautiful. She has some small children. All of her artwork is beautiful. If you have a chance, look up Elizabeth with an S in the name, a Miller. Anyway, she's very pro-life, and what this depicts is the storm that's coming at a pregnant woman who's trying to protect her unborn child, and the forces that want her to get an abortion, or I could go on and on about what some of the ultrasound scans that they use to terrify women that there might be a problem with their baby. But most striking is her hand, I think, reaching out to just stop the storm coming at her.
And the colors,
aren't the colors
beautiful? I don't know how this will come out on the TV here, but the colors in person were just perfect.
It was very dramatic.
It was really excellent.
And so all the proceeds, we're selling prints, and we're selling little stickers and different size prints, and all of the proceeds from her painting are going to the pro-life movement. So I'm taking up a gift to the Pregnancy Center in Lindenville, and I'll bring them one of these paintings to encourage women to just hold out against the storm.
So give our listeners a little closing statement here about a place where they could volunteer. Go to the website and
there's some interesting new groups starting up. One is Vermonters for the Common Good. You always go to our website. I should promote Vermont Right to Life.
Which is excellent, by the way. That's a good. It's a good website.
And we have not always got a lot of time. You can find us on Facebook. But at the conference, there's VermontersForTheCommonGood.org, and that's a new organization that is formed in response to protecting our Constitution from risky,
Yep. Right.
And go see them. They have a nice little mission statement, and what they also have are a number of words that you can click on to find out more about Proposal 5, Vermonters for the Common Good. And then a newly developing organization called Vermont Family Alliance is only on Facebook, I think. You have to find them on Facebook. Vermont Family Alliance. They were trying to grow an organization of parents who want more protection for their rights to responsibly raise their children. Their rights over, education,
Right.
medical decisions.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah.
Good for them. We've sort of lost that.
We have really lost it. We've abdicated it.
Yep.
Yeah. And they don't realize, like Act 35, that was their
Yep.
central theme, was let's repeal Act 35 and get back some parents.
Yep.
The Vermont Supreme Court has actually clearly stated that parents have the rights, and the legislature is taking that away from them.
Yep.
Trying to think what else.
Well, I can tell you that I think the legislature has in certain cases just abdicated their authority, and I don't want to change the focus of this
Yeah, no,
discussion.
but it's true.
But there are a couple of committees and a couple of organizations that they've put together, and they've said, "Here, go ahead."
Go ahead. So
Go
what
ahead,
are they
do-
doing?
do-
They're putting
do it.
themselves out of work. What do we
Yeah.
need a legislature
Well,
for?
exactly. It's like, no, that's your job.
Yeah,
You know?
and they're abdicating to the courts, because I don't know if I'm saying this over and over again, but every time we ask, what will this mean? They said the courts will decide. No, you're
No, they're
supposed to
right,
decide.
right,
And then the
exactly.
courts interpret our Constitution.
Exactly.
So this is,
And I think the courts have sort of trying to push back. I've read some things where they're like, that isn't our job. Our job is you make the laws, we interpret it, and
and then
there
they
you
know
go.
what they know
Yeah.
what their job is. But
Right.
now, if you put this in the Constitution, they're forced. One Planned Parenthood employee said, "What personal reproductive autonomy means will be a question for lawmakers for decades to
Wow.
come." So they're admitting over and over again it means
then-
more than they
right.
say, and it's going to tie everything up, and the courts are going to be the answer.
Wonderful.
I know you don't mean that.
No, well, I just find it very sad that they've abdicated so much to groups of people that are not even elected. I mean, in some of these cases, they're just appointed people.
Not
I
responsible.
didn't vote for them.
And usually paid extraordinary
big-
amounts
yes.
of money. And that's the job our legislators are being paid to
right.
do. This is reckless, irresponsible, and an abdication of their sworn oath. Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck, Mary.
Thank you.
No, I think you're going to be surprised once people understand it, because if they hear you're trying to stop abortion, they're going to
Yeah.
push back. But if they understand what the message is and what you're trying to do, I think you'll find a lot of support out there.
We'll see.
Because then
We'll see.
not being very
it's an
neutral.
opportunity.
I have to say, because I'm supposed to be neutral, which obviously I didn't do a good job. But if anybody who is pro-abortion wants to be on this show, I welcome you, and I would hope we would have the same discussion from your point of view. You are welcome to come on the show. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime.
I'll take you up on
Yeah,
that.
no, seriously, anytime. All right, thank you very much,
Thank
and
you.
thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.